my name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old today, and I still remember every single detail perfectly. What happened to me 3 separate times over more than 2 decades still doesn't make any sense, and I have absolutely no logical explanation for why it kept happening to me. The first incident occurred when I was 10 years old at my best friend Jordan's house during a sleepover. The second happened at 15 with my buddy Anthony at his house. The third incident completely changed my entire life. Before we start, hit that like and subscribe button if you love real scary stories. And keep listening, because none of what happened next ever made sense to me. I still remember that basement like it was yesterday. Jordan's house sat on the edge of our suburban neighborhood in Ohio. One of those older homes with a finished basement that every kid in middle school wanted to hang out in. The carpet was this weird orange color from the 90s, and there was a big black leather sectional couch pushed against the wall where we planned to sleep that night. I was 10 years old. Jordan was my best friend since 2nd grade. We had known each other forever, and I was excited about my first real sleepover. His parents had said we could stay up until 1 in the morning playing video games, which felt like staying up until midnight at the end of the world. We played Nintendo 64 for hours straight. GoldenEye, Mario Kart, anything we could get our hands on. Around 11 at night, Jordan's parents came downstairs to tell us to try and get some sleep soon. His dad was friendly about it, laughing at our protests, and his mum smiled as she headed back upstairs. Jordan and I agreed we would try to sleep, even though we both knew that meant we would probably just lay there talking until we passed out from exhaustion. I remember laying on the couch. The TV was still on, but the sound was low, just giving off a faint blue glow in the darkness. Jordan was on the other side of the sectional, already half asleep. The basement felt different at night. It felt bigger somehow, like the walls had moved further away. There were boxes stacked in the far corner by the stairs, a water heater, some old furniture covered with white sheets. Normal basement stuff. Nothing unusual. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up at some random time in the middle of the night. The TV was still on, but the screen had gone blank. It was giving off this dim, pale light that barely lit the room. My eyes were adjusting to the darkness when I noticed something in the far corner by the stairs. There was something there. Tall. Really tall. It was standing perfectly still, and at first I thought it was just one of those sheet-covered chairs, or maybe some old storage boxes stacked weird. But the more I stared at it, the more my brain told me it was wrong. This object reached almost to the ceiling. It had a shape that wasn't quite right for furniture. I remember my heart starting to beat faster. I didn't move. I just stared at it, trying to convince myself that I was still half asleep, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But the thing about being a 10-year-old kid is that your instincts are still sharp. Something deep in my brain was screaming at me that what I was seeing didn't belong there. I shut my eyes tight. I didn't want to look at it anymore. I just laid there on that couch, completely still, barely breathing, hoping that if I didn't acknowledge it, it would go away. I have no memory of falling back asleep. I only remember waking up again to a sound that made my entire body go rigid. It was screaming. Jordan's mom was screaming upstairs, not a playful scream, not a startled scream. This was a sound of pure terror and panic that came right through the basement ceiling. Jordan jolted awake at the same moment I did. We locked eyes for maybe half a second before we both ran upstairs without saying a word. When we got to his parents' bedroom, his mom was sitting on the bed crying. His dad was already out of the room, checking the hallway, checking every door and window in the house. His mom looked at us and told us to go back downstairs. She wouldn't tell us what she had seen. His dad came back after searching the entire house and said there was no sign of anyone. No broken windows, no forced doors, nothing. But something had terrified his mother so badly that she couldn't stop shaking. Years later, years after I had moved on and tried to forget that night, Jordan brought it up one day. He said his mom had finally talked about it. She told him that she had woken up that night and seen a tall, dark figure standing by their bedroom door. She described it the same way I had tried to describe what I saw in the basement, but I never told Jordan what I had seen. I had never mentioned that figure to anyone. She described it as impossibly tall, standing there, completely still, just watching them sleep. I didn't think about that night very much after we got older. I filed it away as a weird, creepy experience that kids sometimes have a combination of being tired and scared and letting my imagination run wild. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of something that would follow me for the next 2 decades. I was 15 when the second incident happened. I was a sophomore in high school, and my best friend at that time was a guy named Anthony. We were both into video games, and his parents had decided to go out of town for the entire weekend, leaving Anthony home alone. He called me up and asked if I wanted to come over and spend the night. I jumped at the chance. I rode my bike over to his house on a Friday evening around 7 o'clock. His house was nicer than mine. His parents had money, and it showed in the way they had decorated everything. We had the whole place to ourselves, and we were beyond excited about it. We spent the first few hours doing exactly what 15-year-old boys do when they are unsupervised. We played every video game he owned. FIFA, Call of Duty, anything we could find. We ate an insane amount of junk food. Popcorn was spilled all over the living room floor. We had chips and candy and soda everywhere. We were obnoxious and loud and didn't care because there was nobody there to tell us to shut up. Around 9:30 at night, we got bored with video games. We watched half of a movie that we couldn't focus on and decided that wasn't entertaining enough. That's when Anthony got the idea to prank call people. He made a few calls to local pizza places and restaurants, changing his voice and asking stupid questions. It was juvenile and dumb, but at 15 it felt like the funniest thing in the world. When it was my turn, I just randomly dialed numbers on his house phone. I wasn't being smart about it. I was just hitting random digit combinations and seeing who would pick up. On maybe my 4th attempt, someone answered. A guy with a deep, rough voice picked up the phone. Instead of saying hello, he just said, "Yeah." That one word told me that I had disturbed him doing something, and he was not happy about it. Anthony was laughing in the background like crazy, which completely threw off my concentration. I started laughing too. I couldn't get the words out properly. I was stammering and cracking up and basically ruining my own prank call before it even started. The guy on the other end didn't say anything else. He just waited, and his silence made the whole thing feel weird. I tried to compose myself and actually go through with the prank. I asked him something ridiculous, like if I could borrow one of the wheels from his car. I was trying to sound innocent and young, like I really needed a car wheel. The guy's response chilled me instantly. He asked me what my name was. I hesitated and said Bob, using the first name that came to my head. Without missing a beat, he said, "Really? Are you sure it's not Anthony?" The world went silent. Anthony's laughter stopped immediately. I looked at him, and his entire face had gone pale. I was confused at first. How could this guy possibly know Anthony's name? How did he get that information? It didn't make sense. I hung up the phone without saying another word. I couldn't stay on the line with whoever that was for one more second. I asked Anthony who the hell that guy was. Anthony said he didn't know. I asked if maybe the caller ID displayed his name or something. Anthony checked. The caller ID just showed his father's name. It wasn't possible for a random stranger to know Anthony's name from a phone number in the pre-internet era. This was before social media. This was before everyone's personal information was just floating around online for anyone to access. Anthony was 15. He wasn't on any of those people search websites. We looked it up on a computer and couldn't find anything that explained how this guy could have gotten that information so quickly. We were both nervous after that. Anthony wanted to call his dad, but he was too scared because he wasn't supposed to have anyone over that weekend. His parents had been very clear about that. So we decided to just brush it off and keep the night going. We tried to laugh it off, but there was an underlying tension now. Something had shifted. We went back to watching the movie we had started earlier. We were sitting on the couch trying to focus on the screen when we heard the front storm door opening. Not someone knocking. Someone had opened it. Then we heard the doorknob to the front door being turned. It only turned about halfway before the lock stopped it from turning any further. Anthony immediately turned off the TV. I went over to the window and carefully moved the blinds open just enough to see outside. There was a tall man standing in the porch. He was average build, but he had this presence that felt wrong. I was still looking at him when he suddenly turned and looked directly at me, looking at him through the window. I practically threw the blinds back into place and whispered to Anthony that someone was outside. We both froze. We didn't move. We didn't make a sound. Then we heard something that made my stomach drop. We heard the gate to the backyard opening. It was right outside the kitchen window. Anthony told me to go lock the back door. I ran down the hallway that led to the back door and froze dead in my tracks. There was a silhouette outside the back door. I could see the shape of a person standing there looking into the house. The silhouette was perfectly still. Watching. I don't think he had seen me yet, but he was definitely trying to look inside. I watched as he put his hand on the door handle and pushed it open. We had forgotten to lock it when we came inside. The door swung open and he stepped into the house. I backed up slowly and went back to the kitchen where Anthony was waiting. I motioned for him to follow me, and we both went upstairs as quietly as we could. We made it to his room and shut the door as softly as possible. I could hear doors opening downstairs, each one getting closer. The sound of his footsteps moving through the house was the worst sound I had ever heard. Then I heard him climbing the stairs. His footsteps were getting closer. They were coming down the hallway. Then they stopped right outside Anthony's door. The door opened. We had crawled under Anthony's bed just in time. The bed had cloth hanging from the bottom, so you couldn't see underneath unless you actually moved the cloth aside. We were pressed against the wall underneath, barely breathing. I could hear his footsteps inside the room. He walked over to the closet and opened it. I heard the sound of coat hangers being slid around, the fabric of jackets rubbing against each other. Then his footsteps moved over to the bed and stopped directly above us. I thought my heart was going to explode out of my chest. I could feel Anthony's breathing next to me, and it was way too loud. I was terrified he was going to give us away. I reached over and covered his mouth with my hand to muffle his breathing. We just laid there underneath that bed, completely frozen, not moving a single muscle. An eternity passed. It might have been 30 seconds, or it might have been 5 minutes. Time didn't make sense. Then I carefully moved my hand away from Anthony's mouth and whispered so quietly that he could barely hear me asking if we could make a run for it. He was about to answer when something happened that I will never forget. For as long as I live, Anthony screamed. A scream of pure panic and terror came out of his mouth as he was suddenly dragged out from under the bed. Someone had reached under and grabbed him. He was thrashing and fighting and screaming. I crawled out as fast as I could and saw a man holding Anthony with one arm while reaching into his pocket with the other. I looked around frantically for anything I could use as a weapon. On Anthony's nightstand there was a screwdriver. I grabbed it and ran at the man and drove that screwdriver into his back with as much force as I could muster. The man screamed and let go of Anthony. We both ran out of the room and down the stairs. We ran out the front door and onto the street. We could have run to a neighbor's house, but in that moment of pure panic, we made the decision to run into the woods behind his property. We found cover behind a thick bush and looked back at the house. The back door was still open. The man came outside looking for us. He was looking around the backyard, then he looked out into the woods. I could swear he looked directly at where we were hiding. Even though it was dark, I felt like he was staring right at us. Then he turned his head and started walking toward our hiding spot. He was coming straight at us. I didn't understand how he could possibly see us in the darkness, but there was no doubt that he knew where we were. Anthony grabbed my arm and we took off running into the woods. We were crashing through branches and leaves, making way too much noise. Anthony tripped over something and went down hard. I crouched down with him, hoping that we had finally made it far enough away. But not even 20 seconds later, I heard footsteps coming toward us fast. They slowed down as they got closer, and I could hear him breathing. He was maybe 2 trees away from us. We both laid down flat on our stomachs in the leaves, not moving, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped. I could hear him looking around. Then after maybe 10 more seconds of silence, the footsteps took off in another direction. He had lost us in the darkness. We waited there for what felt like forever, listening to make sure he was really gone. Once we couldn't hear him anymore, we got up and started moving back toward the house. We were terrified that he was still out there looking for us. But we knew our best option was to get back to the house and call the police. We made it back to the backyard, and this time we remembered to shut the back door behind us. Anthony picked up the phone and dialed 911. He stayed on the line with the dispatcher while I went to the back windows to make sure the guy wasn't out there. It was pitch black outside. I couldn't see anything. Then I did something that seemed incredibly stupid, but I was panicking. I turned on the backyard lights. In the distance, over by the edge of the woods, I saw him. He was standing in front of a big oak tree, and he was staring directly at the house. At the exact moment the light hit him, he turned and disappeared back into the darkness. That was the last time either of us ever saw him. The police arrived about 8 minutes later. They searched the woods, they took statements from both of us, and they found the screwdriver I had dropped. I'd gotten him pretty good with it. There were blood traces on the ground and on the fence post where he had wiped his hand. The police said they would investigate, but to this day, I don't know if they ever found him. I never heard anything about it after that night. No arrests, no follow-up calls. Nothing. I tried to move on from that night, just like I had moved on from the basement incident at Jordan's house. I filed it away as a traumatic experience that I had survived, but somewhere deep down, something was wrong. Somewhere deep down, I knew that these 2 incidents couldn't be coincidences. Fast forward to when I was 34 years old. I was married. My life had settled into a normal routine. My wife and I had been having some problems, nothing major, just the typical stress that comes with being married. One night we had gotten into an argument about something stupid. She was upset about housework, I had forgotten to put the toilet seat down and she had gone off on me about it. It escalated from there into everything else that she felt I was doing wrong. It was exhausting, and I didn't want to deal with it, so I called my buddy Paul. Paul and I had been friends for about 15 years at this point. He had done well for himself financially. He had a huge house with an incredible amount of space. He had invited me over plenty of times, and my wife had always been annoyed about it because his house was significantly nicer than ours. That night, I asked him if I could crash at his place, and he told me to come over whenever I wanted. I could stay as long as I needed. I assured him it would just be one night, but he said it didn't matter. I drove over to his house around 11 at night. We had a couple of beers and just talked about life and work and everything going on. After a while, I went to bed in one of his guest bedrooms. Paul had 3 guest bedrooms, which seemed excessive, but he explained that he had them because he sometimes threw big parties and people would need places to sleep. All 3 guest bedrooms were lined up next to each other down one hallway, and his master bedroom was across the hall. I fell asleep relatively quickly, but after what felt like maybe an hour, I started hearing noises coming from the bedroom next to mine. At first, I thought maybe Paul had gone into one of those rooms to do something, but the noises continued, and they seemed to be getting louder. I heard what sounded like something being moved around, something heavy. I got out of bed and went over to the door of the room next to mine. The doorknob was locked. I went back across the hall and knocked on Paul's door. He was already in bed. I asked him what the noise was, and he said he didn't hear anything. He seemed unconcerned by it. I mentioned that there was definitely a strange noise coming from that bedroom, and he told me that he always keeps those 2 rooms locked because he keeps some personal belongings in there. He told me to go back to sleep, and if the noises continued, I could come back and tell him. I went back to my room and tried to sleep. The noises had stopped, so I figured maybe it was nothing. Maybe I had imagined it, or maybe a mouse or something had gotten inside. I was just starting to drift off to sleep again when I heard it. A single tap on the wall. It came from the wall that separated my room from the next room over. Then I heard a voice. It was faint, almost muffled, but it was definitely a human voice. I got out of bed immediately and went back to Paul's room. This time, he took me seriously. He got the key to the 2 locked rooms and we unlocked the door to the first room. As soon as we opened the door, we felt a breeze hit us. The window was completely open. The closet door was also open. We looked around the room and there was evidence that someone had been in there. The bed had marks on it like someone had been lying on it. The closet was full of empty bags. Paul checked the drawers where he kept his valuable belongings and they were empty. Paul ran out of the room immediately and went to the 3rd guest bedroom. I followed right behind him. He unlocked the door and what we saw made my blood run cold. A black figure jumped out the window onto the patio roof. Paul was about to jump out after him, but we both stopped and ran outside through the back door instead. By the time we made it outside, whoever it was had already disappeared into the darkness. But what we found inside that 3rd bedroom was far more disturbing than anything else. The white sheets on the bed were stained with blood. The closet had a butcher knife sitting on the floor with blood spots on it. All of his valuable belongings were gone. We called the police immediately. They arrived and searched the property. They found evidence that someone had been living in those rooms for more than a week. There were food containers, blankets, personal items scattered around. They said that based on the evidence, there had been multiple people living in those rooms while Paul was home. They were likely homeless and likely dealing with drugs. The police searched the woods and the surrounding properties but never found them. As I was standing there in Paul's house while the police were investigating, something clicked in my mind. I remembered the basement at Jordan's house. I remembered the tall figure by the stairs. I remembered the man on the porch trying to get into Anthony's house. And now this. 3 separate incidents over 2 decades. 3 times something terrible had almost happened to me. And I realized something that made my skin crawl. The second time at Anthony's house, the man had known Anthony's name through the phone. He had known information he shouldn't have known. And at Paul's house, whoever had been living in those rooms had access to Paul's valuable belongings, his personal information, his schedule. They knew when he would be gone. They knew he would be home alone on certain nights. They had been watching. They had been learning his patterns. I never told Paul about the other incidents. I never told him about the man who tried to break into Anthony's house or about the figure in Jordan's basement. But standing there in his house, while police were investigating, I realized that whatever was happening to me, it had been happening for a long time. And I had no idea who it was or why they were doing it. To this day, 5 years have passed since that night at Paul's house, and nothing else has happened. I haven't experienced another incident. I haven't seen anything suspicious, but I'm not stupid enough to think that it's over. I'm not arrogant enough to believe that whatever this is has just stopped. I'm more cautious now. I check my surroundings constantly. I lock my doors obsessively. I look in my rearview mirror constantly. I check the bushes around my house. I avoid being alone when possible. The police never found anyone from any of these incidents. No arrests, no closure, no explanation for how any of it was possible. But I know what I experienced. I know that these weren't coincidences, and I know that somewhere out there someone was interested in me for reasons I will never understand. Someone was watching me. Someone was learning about me. And that is the part that keeps me awake at night, because the scariest part isn't that these things happened. The scariest part is that I still don't know why, and I don't know if it's truly over. And every single day, I have to live with the knowledge that at any moment it could start again.